Oh my gosh. Okay, that should be better. Hi everyone, welcome to Adobe Live. Have you ever heard your own voice slightly delayed in your ears? It's super frustrating. Happy to be here though. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we are creating and streaming today, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. My name's Flynn, and thankfully, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Just let me know in chat if you cannot. Hopefully it should be all good now. But I am joined today by the wonderful Sophie Elinor, self-professed type dork, and I can hear the echo again. Oh my god! Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Flynn. Are you doing all right over there?
I'm
You
fine. It's just every
fighting
time
for
I
your life?
transition, it re-triggers my camera audio, and it's the worst audio, and it's just feeding back into me. So,
Oh
sorry, ladies and
no.
gentlemen, that should be fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you? Apart
Yeah.
from the echo.
Apart from the echo, I am all good. It's the weird uh, post Max, post Halloween, pre Christmas weird time,
Yeah.
where you're thinking of Christmas presents and Christmas break and or holidays, whatever you might celebrate. It's Christmas for me, and it's just a weird, weird time. I
Yeah,
think.
it's like the holiday mud, isn't it? You're just
Right.
like in a bunch of it.
That's it. Yeah, you're not quite going uphill, but yeah, you're stomping through
Yeah.
mud, looking at a hill. So that's how I'm going. But we're also experimenting with some stuff, and I do love these streams because we get to bring on some of our favorite people, such as yourself, and kind of experiment with a little bit that might be a precursor to some stuff we might do next year, and that's always fun. So
How's
um,
that sizzle?
yeah, yeah, coming soon. And yeah, so we thought that it might be a cool idea to invite some of our favorite folks from throughout the year. That was a tongue twister, and to come on and create some sort of holiday or festive digital cards that could maybe be printed as well. We'll create a little gallery. This will be the first stream. We're kicking Sophie. Sophie's kicking everything off in like the only non-print medium that we're using, which is After Effects. But yeah, we'll create a little gallery. We'll put a link down into everything, and we thought it would be a little bit of fun. And Sophie very graciously has put a hand up to be the very first artist to come along. So thank you, Sophie.
I'm so excited for it. I love this format and I feel like we're gonna make some magic.
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, Alessandra. Hello, Dark Hours Co. in chat. Hello, everybody watching. If you've got any questions as we're rolling along, we're always happy to answer questions as we're going. It's a fun kind of light stream. But if you've got questions for Sophie as we're going through, or myself, we're happy to answer them because we are live. So that's a really nice, fun feature of being live. Should we jump across to who you are and what you do, Sophie? Because it's been a little
Yeah,
bit. It's been a
sure.
it's been a little bit since you've been on. So let's do that. I'm probably going to hear myself again. Here we go.
Every time.
Yeah, every time. Yep, I did it. Oh my god. Okay.
As you said previously, I am a self-professed type dork. A lot of the work that I do is lettering based, and a lot of that is in some kind of animated format. So I love doing 2D animation, whether that's in like Photoshop or After Effects. Love a bit of stop motion, love basically anything to do with making words move. And I guess beyond that, just a real color fiend. Like
Color
hugely
fiend. Yeah.
saturated, intense color palettes is really my jam. So that's
Oh my god. Have you been on since the Clippy thing?
maybe
I don't know.
it was a
Have
couple
you?
months ago. I
Yeah,
don't know. Have
maybe. I don't know. Can we talk about the Clippy thing just very, very quickly? I know you don't have a ton of time, but that was really funny.
we? Yeah, I was just staring out the window one day and thought, wouldn't it be funny if I made like a giant disco clippy
Yeah.
in real life? And once the thought kind of floated past, it took hold of my brain and then spent the next, I don't know, it's for like 6 or 7 weeks working with my dad to try and like build this paperclip shape out of PVC pipe that we got at the hardware store, getting the curves just right, and then yeah, covering it with disco tiles. And yeah, probably one of the dumbest things I've ever made. But but really, really fun, and people seem to love it. People kept tagging like Microsoft and the creator of Clippy in the comments, and I think they actually saw it and like wrote back, and it was all a bit of a weird internet whirlwind. Yeah,
It
it
was
was good
crazy. It was
fun.
like a bunch of brands jumping on like the brand bandwagon of the day. It's like all the social
Yeah.
media like team. Like, hey, someone made a Clippy. Like, oh my god, that's cool. But that's very cool. And I love that it's like I know you do a lot of craft stuff as well, but like we're here to talk about
Mm,
digital things. But you have that whole other side of creating like tactile craft at the same time,
yeah,
and it's just super cool to kind of get your hands dirty. I love it.
it really is. Yeah, sometimes just stepping away from the computer and making something like tactile
Yeah,
is just the sort of rejuvenation that you need.
yeah.
But yeah, it was good fun.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, well, with that setup, should we jump across into After Effects and have a little bit of a chat
Yeah,
about what you have in store? Oh, have you done a post there?
definitely. Yeah, so the theme for today, and the theme for these streams that you were mentioning is some kind of holiday card. And as
Yeah,
soon as you said that, as soon as you like kind of asked me about that, I was like, I really want to do a Mad Magazine style fold-in animation. I've made physical versions in the past before, but I've never actually attempted to do a 2D animation version. And I thought, why not have a crack at that and see how it looks? So this was my first little foray into that.
cool.
I love that it combines a bit of wordplay. Like it's a bit cheeky. There's a surprise when it kind of opens out. It kind of has two meanings, I guess, as
Yeah.
well. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Were you ever a big Mad Magazine fan yourself?
I was a massive Mad Magazine fan, and yeah, are
Yeah,
you talking about the folding
yeah,
pages?
yeah.
I used to love those.
Um, I was trying to think back because I've always been a bit obsessed with them, but I don't know that I ever actually had Mad Magazines, like physical copies growing
Right.
up. But like much of my kind of cultural knowledge, I think it came from The Simpsons because Mad Magazine is referenced a bunch of times in
Yeah.
various episodes of The Simpsons. But for anyone who might not know what those fold-ins are, I've just kind of taken a few little cheeky
Yeah.
screen grabs here. But it's basically just, the image is folded out. There's one sort of intricate picture, but when you fold the page in, like a hidden meaning kind of emerges.
Yeah.
So it's really interactive. It's yeah, there's like a little secret that you kind of get to discover. This was the Simpsons one. Um,
The Almighty Allah.
yeah, so Homer folds it incorrectly and then doesn't get it right, and that's a great joke.
Which
And
is a great
then
joke because you would do it wrong as a kid. So I don't know.
yeah,
When I had them, you'd line it up and also you just sometimes wouldn't get the joke because you're a kid,
because
and
you're a
it's
kid and it's like political satire or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I forgot about the back
um,
tattoo one.
yeah, so did I.
Wow.
And then I was trying to Google what references popped up in The Simpsons. I was like, there was a character who had a Mad Magazine tattooed on her back, and when she sort of pushed her shoulder blades back, it did the
It made a
same thing.
sound as well.
Yeah, it was like a awful like
Just
crinkling.
I just recalled the sound that it makes.
Yeah, that one was
Wow.
buried deep in there. Glad to know it's still in there though.
Yep.
So that is the sort of inspiration. Because I'm a type doc, we're going to do a typographic play on this. And because we're heading into the silly season, I thought let's start with happy holidays. We'll make a nice little greeting card that says happy holidays. Who doesn't love like a generic sort of all-inclusive, well-wishing kind of greeting at the end of the year? It's been a long year though, and I feel like we're all kind of a bit burnt out come November and we're
Yeah.
ready for a break. So I thought, why don't we make the surprise text on the inside? Happy knowing this long freaking year is just about done. Now, please don't email me. I'm on
Oh,
holidays.
that's amazing. I love that.
So that's going to be our little surprise filling in the sandwich that we create.
Cool.
The lettering is largely based off a font by Meg Lewis, who I'm a huge fan of her work. She makes like beautiful, wobbly, wonky fonts. This is kind of it out of the box, but just to, I guess, kind of consolidate things and make it feel a little bit more streamlined. I've just adjusted a lot of the letters so that I get that clean line on the right and left hand side of the lettering.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is just like elongating the arms of the E's, adding in some extra O's. There's a few little adjustments that I've made to the lettering here just to get that nice kind of unified block of text there.
Yeah. And sorry,
This
why
is,
would you go about that? So stretching, because it's kind of carnal sin usually, right, to stretch a letter.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I just want to hear your opinion on this and thought process, because you could do the same thing by, changing the oh my gosh, the leading or the kerning.
Yeah, yep,
I don't know how it would be in this sentence paragraph format, but you could
yeah.
change the gaps between the letters, is what I'm trying to say. Or you could change the height, obviously. A really quick, easy way would just be to
Yeah.
change the height. And it kind of almost looks like those old school like train station stops where they would do that sometimes. They'd have them stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
Just curious on your thoughts on that before we move on, because it's just
Explain
because it's
yourself.
fun.
What do you have to say for yourself? um, so to be clear, when I said I stretched the letters, I didn't just stretch them this way. I
Right.
actually grabbed the anchor points like this and moved them like this.
Right.
So the weight distribution is not actually changing. We're not getting, if I grabbed this and stretched it this way, you can see this area here is getting really heavy and disproportionate to the rest of the weight of the letters.
Mm.
So it's more just widening them to take up more space rather than actually stretching them,
Right.
elongating their limbs or just giving them like a wider stance or something rather than just doing a straight stretch.
Got it.
Which
Okay,
I mean
cool.
is a cardinal sin, but I've also seen it done really well. And sometimes those things, sometimes those rules are meant to be broken, I guess, also.
Cool. I like that. Okay, great.
Now, in order to make this whole thing work, there's a fair bit of maths involved, which is not my forte at all. And 3D is a space that kind of turns me around and I get a bit confused in that space sometimes also. So this was a little bit of a challenge for me, but I think we can make this work with some maths, if you
Okay.
can bear with me and if I can try and explain it correctly.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing I'm fantastic at maths. I'm not.
Oh God, we need someone who can do numbers, Flynn.
It's okay. We're live. It's fine.
I have, let me do this so you can see. To start with, I've created an artboard with some easy to work with numbers.
Smart.
As a starting point, because we are going to be dividing this artboard into little slices. And I have given myself some guides here. We are working with a height of 2400 and we want 4 pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So essentially we want to divide that canvas into 4. So 4 into 24 should be 600 pixels. So each of those slices should be 600 pixels high. And for now, that's all we need to remember, that they need to be 600 pixels high.
Okay.
All of that in mind, we're going to bring this into After Effects, and then we can start the actual rigging of this file. So that's going to bring everything in. At the moment, they're Illustrator layers. I might just quickly convert or create shapes from vector layers, just so that if we want to, if we've got time, we can go back and do some more animation on these letters separately.
Right.
But everything else is pretty much the same as how we had it in Illustrator. So our artboard is the same size, everything is scaled exactly the same. We haven't done anything. All our numbers and all our maths should still work.
I think that's what like people that are bad with maths need to do, is you have to really do it step by step, make it as easy for yourself as possible. Go, okay, now if I don't touch anything, it'll be all right. It'll be okay. Yeah.
That's very much been my strategy with this one.
I'm with you 100%. Yeah.
There's also a few layers within layers here, but I think once we kind of step through it, it won't appear quite so complicated or convoluted.
Cool.
The first thing we're going to do here is we're just going to group these layers together with a pre-comp. So we will call this, sorry, my window is just opening up on the wrong monitor. We will call this one, I don't know, we'll call it original lettering so that we can find our way back to it if we need to. And then before I do anything else, I'm also going to group that inside another group, even though we haven't done anything yet, just so that I can start making some slices of this thing. So we've got our lettering here, and we're going to put that in another group. We'll call that group slice 1.
Okay.
for starters. Okay, are you with me
I'm
still?
with you. I'm not sure
We
what a
haven't done
slice
any
is, but I'm
animating.
going to figure it out. It's good. We're good.
I'm gonna double click to go back into that group.
Mm.
And if we have another look at our Illustrator file, so we've got like this is our complete artwork, but we want to kind of slice this into 4 pieces where we've got our guides here in order for us to be able to fold and manipulate the artwork. So we will go into composition settings, which again is opening up on the wrong window. Here we go. And you can see there we've got the same dimensions as in our original artwork, 1600 by 2400. I'm going to make this 600, and that's going to give us our first little slice.
Right.
So
okay.
if I duck back out into our original, maybe let's rename this here actually, so we'll call this one completed artwork, just so we can navigate our way around again. So this is going to be our final artwork here. If we double click in, we get to our little slice. And then if we double click into that, we get to our completed lettering. So those are sort of the Dante's Inferno layers that we've got so far.
The turtles all the way down. Got it.
Absolutely. Thank you. However, we don't want our first slice to be here. We want it to be the top of the page. So there's a couple ways we can do this. The easiest way is probably just to grab it and pull it down in that way. However, because this needs to be quite precise in order for everything to line up to get that animation working, we probably want to be a little bit more precise about this.
Yep.
So if I undo that and we have a look at the position property here, when I move this down, you can see that it's that second number, the y-axis, that is moving. And we want that, you can kind of see we're getting close to 1200 and we're working in multiples of 600, remember? But those are our slices. That's the important number we have to remember is 600. When I tell it to go to 1200, it's taking it right to the top of that piece of canvas.
Right. Got it.
Okay, beautiful. Now, if we jump back into our top layer, which is the completed artwork, we've now got the correct slice as slice 1.
Right.
Excellent.
I'm with you.
Beautiful.
You're a fantastic teacher. I'm with you.
Yeah, the maths is probably not as hard as I'm making it out to be, but I'm just like, yeah, the combination of maths and 3D, I'm like, ooh, where am I going?
Yeah, I get it.
We basically want to do this 3 more times now to get our other 3 slices. Now, there's kind of a road you can take that is the wrong road here. We want to duplicate this slice to create slice 2. If we do it in this window here, if I just kind of copy paste another layer here, and if I go into that layer and move this around, when I go back into the top layer, you can see it's done it to both. It's moved both pieces.
They're like connected because you copied it?
Yes, because I copied it from this window here.
Gotcha.
If I duplicate it up here, it's going to call it slice 2. And when I bring that down and then move in here and move this around, when we go into our completed artwork, we've got 2 separate pieces. Right. So it's really important. I don't know why that is the case, that if you copy it here, it's different to copying it here, but it is a really like important step. But if you don't do that one, it's just going to not work at all.
Yeah.
So if we go back into our second slice, where are we? Slice 2. Okay, so slice 2 we haven't moved yet, but when we dive in, we now want the next little piece under here, which will be 600 pixels below where we currently are. So again, we could just like move it this way, but knowing that we're starting on 1200 minus 600, we're just going to end up at 600.
Right.
With me still? Beautiful. So we'll do that 2 more times. So slice 2, copying from this window up here, just copy and paste, and then dragging that into the timeline window. Then we jump into that layer. And again, we're just moving the slice down. This should be 0. Yep.
Nice.
And once more for the last little piece of the puzzle, and we click into that and check out our position properties. This should be -600, I think. Yep. Beautiful. Okay, so we've got our 4 little slices here. And within that, we've got our original lettering. We don't need to worry about that yet.
So just a quick question, if you don't mind, before we move on. You've got the 4 slices. Are they essentially layers of the same thing on top, or are they crops? Oh, yes, just yes. So they're
yeah, it's drawing from the same original kind of artwork, but it's because we've told the composition instead of being 20, what did we have? 2400. We want it to be 6.
Yep.
So it's, yeah, it is a crop. It's a crop, but it's a different window over the same artwork, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Okay, cool.
Beautiful. So we've got each of our pieces here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, but they are sitting directly on top of each other, which is not particularly useful. We want them in chronological order and sitting kind of back to back. Before we move that though, there's another like critical bit of building that we have to do here, and that's to do with where the anchor point is positioned. So by default, whenever you bring anything into After Effects, it'll place the anchor point directly in the middle of the object. And you can see it's done that here if we just look at the first layer. And what that means is whenever we apply any sort of transformation to that layer, it's going to like move from that point. It's going to pivot from that point. So, you know, you can kind of see with the anchor point in the dead center, it's moving this way. But let me turn these other layers off. So we're just focusing on this one. I've also made a paper prop because I thought maybe this will help. So this is essentially the kind of motion we're going for, right? We've got a piece of paper, there's like 4 slices, and we're trying to get it to concertina fold in the center.
Right.
But if we have a look at how that paper is moving, like this panel here is kind of moving from this point because it's attached to this edge. So it's following it that way. And the reverse is true on this side. This piece is moving in that direction because it's attached to this this panel here. So we kind of need to tell After Effects that actually these layers need to behave as if they are being folded like paper.
Right.
So we can select, again, we can do this 2 ways. You can kind of eyeball it. So if you select the anchor point tool here, and you can just, like drag it to roughly where you think the bottom is. But again, we're trying to be quite precise. So we're going to try and use a bit of maths here again. At the moment, the anchor point is sitting like 300 pixels down from the top and bottom of that artwork. Because again, we've got 600 pixels and half of that is 300. We want to say, no, go to, is it 0 or 600 that we want? No, we want 600. We want it to sit at the bottom. So it's measuring from the top. So that makes sense.
Okay. Yep. Got it.
Yeah. And you can kind of see when I did that, it's moved like where the artwork is sitting in relation to that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought they were 2 separate things. Like you'd have a property place for that and a property place for the that point that you were talking about before.
It's easy to get muddled around in this. But I think again, once we kind of get to the end of this, all of this will make much more sense. It's kind of abstract until you see the motion. So we'll just do 1 slice at a time. So again, if we look at our little paper model, these first 2 panels need to move this way. So their anchor point needs to sit at the bottom of the panel, whereas numbers 3 and 4 are moving in the opposite direction. So they need to be at the top of the panel rather than the bottom.
Yeah. Cool.
So slice 1 is good.
Love the prop, by
Slice.
the way. My God. Love
Yeah,
the
thank
prop.
you.
Yeah.
It took me hours.
That's incredible.
Slice 2 should be the same as slice 1. So we want our anchor point to be at 600. That's good. Slice 3, like I said, is going to be moving in the opposite direction. So rather than moving that anchor point down, we actually want it to sit up here at the top. And I think we worked out before that should be 0. And the same on slice 4. We go to our anchor point property and just turn that 300 into 0. Now that we've done that, we can finally like position them where they need to sit for their final little animation.
Right. Cool.
We'll do that again. This is another thing you can kind of eyeball and just like move it up into place, but we're trying to be precise here.
Yeah.
The distance that the position is telling us, I think again, is measuring from that center anchor point. So it's telling us that that anchor point there is currently 1300 down. Is that correct? So we want to move that up. We want that to be at 600.
Right.
That makes sense because we're 600 deep. 600, Flynn. I got to remember 600.
I also like you did something that I do quite a lot as well, where sometimes you don't know exactly what it would be, but then you moved it close enough and you're like, okay, well, it's like 574. So it's going to be 600 because if it's not 600, then it would have been like 300. So you can kind of do close enough maths as well and then get the computer to figure out the rest.
Yeah. And that's like 100% what I found myself doing throughout this whole process is just kind of going, is it negative or is it positive? I'm just going to move it manually and I'll watch the numbers. And I know it's going to be a multiple of 600 because that's what we've said it needs to be. So yeah, when you kind of get close enough, as you say, you can go, okay, well, I know it's going to be this then. Slice 2 is already sitting in the correct spot, so we don't need to move that. Slice 3 is also exactly where we need it to be. And slice 4 is currently at 12. We can't see it because it's under slice 3, but that's that layer there. It's currently sitting at 1200, but we need it to be
this
1200 plus 400.
Year is just holidays.
Yeah. There's 3. That, I mean, it doesn't really make sense.
That would be awesome if this whole long freaking year was just holidays. That would be amazing.
Maybe we just leave it at that. Should we stop now?
Yeah, wrap it up.
I think this guy needs to be sitting at 1800 rather. Okay, we have rebuilt what we originally started with in Illustrator. One last little piece of, I'm saying rigging, it's not really rigging, but we're just kind of like building some physics into this thing. Again, going back to our little paper prop.
Oh, yes.
Everything is kind of like hinged onto its neighbor. And because this movement is happening from the center panels, like the 2 outside panels are just kind of being pulled by these 2 inner ones.
Right.
We kind of need to like simulate a similar thing in After Effects. So what we're going to do is use this little pick whip for parenting layers, which is kind of just like saying, hey, hitch your wagon to this other layer. And whatever it's doing, you'll follow through. You'll follow suit. Like this layer is now your parent. You are its child. Do as it says kind of thing.
Cool.
So slice 1 is just going to grab onto slice 2. Slice 4 is going to grab onto slice 3. So we've put our 2 outside panels, hitched them to our 2 inside ones. And slices 2 and 3 can kind of go either way. They're kind of equal, like they are the 2 parents, but let's just make one of them the all-powerful parent. Let's make it slice 2.
Okay.
It doesn't look like anything has changed there, but if I grab slice 2, which everything is now hinging off, it's treating it as if it's one single thing. Whereas if I grab this top layer, or if I grab this one, you can kind of get a bit of a sense for where things are connected.
Yeah, it's great. It's helpful that the timeline is hierarchical as well. So it's like top, second, third, and fourth. And that's actually how the artwork is. Because presumably you could do this when stuff is just all over the shop, like limbs attaching to fingers and all sorts of stuff.
Definitely.
A lot more complicated. But this is quite a great way to explain how the pick whip works.
Yeah, yeah. We're doing very, very basic character building here.
Right.
Now the last little thing we're going to do here is because, this is generally a 2D animation software, but what we're trying to emulate is a 3D thing. So we're just going to switch on the 3D layers for each of these little slices here. And what that's going to do is add a bunch of extra properties, which means we can now move it in a third dimension instead of just, X and Y. We've now got a Z axis to play with. And then now we can actually do the motion. Now that we've done all of that setting up, we've cut it into slices, we've moved the anchor points, we've positioned them correctly, done the parenting pick whip thing. Now we can actually like put some keyframes in and make this thing move, which is very exciting.
Awesome.
So the property that we're going to play with is rotation, because we're rotating the paper. Again, this is just another one of those things where if you get turned around, if you get a bit confused about which axis you're moving on, just pick one of these and like move it around and see what it's doing. You get a pretty quick indication of which axis you're on and which direction something is moving in.
And if you did that with it, you can only see those because you added that 3D. You said, I want to do this in 3D.
Yes.
So it's given you these other dimensions and these other like levers to pull, basically.
Yeah. So cool. Y is turning it this way, which we don't want to do because that's not how the paper is going to work. Z's going to kind of do this sort of weird thing, which again, not what we want. So the property we want is this X rotation.
Yeah.
So we're going to drop a little keyframe on each of those layers on the X rotation property, which is going to lock in the current position that we have. And if we scrub backwards in our timeline, maybe just a second to start with, now we can fold this baby up. We will start with, I think, slice 2, because we've parented everything to that to begin with. So that feels like a good place to start. Again, we get our trusty prop out. We're starting with a flat sheet of paper, and we want these 2 inside panels. Like the 2 outside ones should stay the same, but the 2 inside ones, this should go 90 degrees this way. So let's...
Oh, yeah, I get it. Cool.
Let's... Is it that way, or do we want to go... No, it's not that way. We want to go 90. And it looks like we've completely disappeared our artwork because we've turned a thing that has no depth on its side, which means we can't see anything.
Right, okay.
But if we move to slice 1 and take that X rotation property backwards, we want -90. So now we've got, our artwork should kind of look like this. We've got one piece going this way and the rest of it is just going straight down.
Right.
We want to turn this third panel. If we turn it 90 degrees, it'll go kind of like a step. It'll go like this.
Right.
So we need to go 180.
80. Yeah. Cool. I love it.
Oh my God, this math is like...
I love it. So good. Was the paper for us or for you?
Look, can't it be both?
Can be both. That's awesome. I love that. So good.
So we can flip this guy up -180. And again, because we're now staring at it straight on, it's kind of disappeared. But if we finish off with our slice 4 and bring that final piece down, which should be 90 degrees, I think we might have just done it.
Wow.
Woo!
Oh, wow. So that parenting thing just did it for you, essentially. I know there's a lot of steps in there, but yeah, that's cool.
Yes.
I thought you would have had to do it multiple times and crop things again, but everything you did at the start meant you didn't have to do that later.
Yes.
So cool.
So there's like so many little steps in the lead up to getting to this point, and it all seems kind of tedious and a bit like disconnected until you kind of see how this works. But I also really love that you kind of get these outlines here. I don't know if you can see that as clearly as I can on my end, but you can kind of see this like 3D action off to the sides. So you've got that paper kind of working exactly as the fold in should.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Um, so yeah, that's our little animation there.
That's
So
awesome.
it's a lot of kind of groundwork to get this working, but
Yeah.
there's like 8 keyframes of actual animation
Right.
to do that whole thing. Um, and now we can just kind of like add some polish to this
Right.
to get it looking nice and sleek. Um, yeah, the bulk of the movement is there, but we can kind of smooth this out a little. At the moment, we've got no ease on these keyframes, which is why it's going to look and feel a bit stiff. So as soon as we add that on, this already feels a little bit more, a little bit smoother and a bit kind of easier.
Yeah. Bit more
And
natural.
also, yeah, also because we have, I'm just going to collapse those layers. So I'm just looking at the keyframes. Because we've already figured out exactly where those keyframes need to be in order to reverse that motion and kind of make a loop like we love to do. I can just copy these ones, paste it over here, and then copy my starting keyframes and paste them at the end.
Mm.
And then if we bring this back in here, we should have this nice little looping motion here.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Now there's a little, you probably can't see this because it's such a minor thing, but I'm going to zoom right in here and show you. There's like a teeny tiny sliver of background that's showing in between those layers.
Right.
Can you see that? If I zoom right in, you
I
see that
assumed
little
that that
layer
was
there.
the guide, the 3D guide that was being seen there.
I think it's something to do. Oh, I've got such a frog in my throat today. I'm so sorry.
That's right.
Um, I assume it is something to do with the 3D renderer that the program is using. Because if we, like, I've had a bit of a tinker with this, and when you go into your composition settings, there's like a little 3D renderer tab here.
Yeah.
I think by default, it's probably set to classic 3D, which is just like the basic kind of beginner version of 3D that After Effects will employ.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Cinema 4D one, I think, is the fancy pants one, which has the cleaner rendering and like the smoother finish.
Mm.
When I switch to that, that disappears, but it does kind of like triple your render time.
Yeah.
So I like it's already having a little think about things here. I'm just going to switch it back to classic 3D.
Yeah.
But just as a reference, when you go to export this file, just switch that over before you do, and that little line there should disappear.
Yeah. Have you tried exporting this, and is that line still there?
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool. Just
I did
curious
some
because
test
sometimes there's
exports.
artifacting stuff will happen within the app, but when it actually renders
Mm,
that, especially with 3D, that's why I was just curious.
yeah.
But also sometimes stuff like that's in there and you can't get rid of it for some reason.
Yeah, it was really bugging me. I'm like, I did the maths.
Yeah,
Everything
yeah.
was precise. I did
600.
the maths. Yes. 600 was supposed to be my savior.
Yeah,
But when I switched the 3D renderer, that seemed to fix it. So yeah.
cool. Okay, that's a great tip.
And the other thing that I want to maybe just tinker with here is you can kind of see this nice like folding background action that's happening, but because it's off the edge of the artboard, we're not getting it. So you do still get the folding of the text, but I think it would be exaggerated if you could actually see the edges of this pink background.
Right.
So we've already got groups within groups here, but we're just going to make another group. Pre-comp this and we'll call it, I don't know, final fold or something. That'll do. And if we go to our, like 1 second was, I think, where we had our starting keyframes. Is that right? Let me double check. Yeah, so we're on 1 second for the starting keyframe. So let's go to 1 second and we'll just play with the scale here. So if we just bring that down so you can see the edges of the
Right.
paper, and when it goes to 2 seconds, that's kind of where we want to. Did I drop a keyframe? I did not. The other little sneaky thing that can trip you up sometimes is because this art this part of the animation is happening off the artboard,
Mm.
when we pre-comp it, it just sort of assumes, oh, you don't need that stuff that was happening off to the sides. But if we press this little guy here, this little collapse transformations or continually rasterized layer, that's going to bring our edges back in. And we actually want to go a little bit smaller there. And now we're getting that fold of the paper.
Yeah. Cool.
And
you'd put like a
actually
different colored background in it or something so you could see that?
Yeah. Maybe let's do that now. We can just add in like a solid layer onto our background here, so it's a bit less nothing going on there. And I think I've already eyedropped this, but we'll just use the text color as a
more yellow. Can't
never have too much. And actually, maybe we want to make that a tiny bit smaller because some of that action is getting lost. We don't want it to fall off the edges.
Right.
Because I think it's like adding to that exaggeration of the folding.
Yeah.
So now it's really clear that this is like a piece of paper, it's being folded, and you get your little surprise message on the inside. And again, we'll just do what we did before with our keyframes, copy and paste the start and finishing points, and add some ease to that.
And you're just remembering what second, that like the seconds, like 1, 2, and then it's like 5 and
I think I did.
Yeah.
1 second for this folding transformation, and then keeping it for 2 seconds there, because there's quite a bit of text there. So just to give people a moment to read it.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it'll loop anyway, so hopefully they'll just stay and watch for a while.
That's how you get them, right? Not quite enough time for the average user to read everything, so they have to stick around and wait for it again and again. Double your engagement with this simple trick.
Yeah, that's how you do it. That's how we get you.
I've got one quick question, if you don't mind me asking, from YouTube.
Sure.
How long did it take for you to come up with the message? That was from Nick on YouTube.
Yeah. The message is probably the most time-consuming thing, really, for me.
Right.
I'm like, I want this to be cheeky, and I want it to be like almost the opposite of what the starting message is.
Right.
I think that was kind of what the original Mad Magazine fold-in guy, like, I think that was his sort of whole idea with that concept as well, was for the starting image to be, you know, one thing, and for the folded in thing to be almost the complete opposite of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting the wording and getting the length of everything correct to take a moment. But
at any point did you think of doing I'm tired of these jokes about my giant hand?
No, I didn't, but I wish that I had. Maybe we can do that for the next stream.
Just go forever. And then it'd have to just fade off. Oh, there'll be something in that in a future live stream, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I'll write that down. We'll come back to that. So that's kind of our hero motion sorted.
That's awesome.
We can, if we want, because we've got our layers within layers kind of thing. I don't know. How much time have we got left? We got a few minutes.
We've got a few minutes. Yeah, we've got a few minutes. We're cool.
Okay. Let's dive back down to our original lettering layer, because I had separated out the Happy Holidays lettering, thinking that if we had enough time, maybe we could add a little bit of extra sparkle to this, in the same way that if we look at this example, when it closes, the final letters just have like a bit of a moment on their own before the fold opens. It's just like another layer to add in. You couldn't do that, obviously, if you were doing a print thing, but we are in digital land, baby. So let's have at it. Maybe we'll have a look at 5 seconds as a starting point. And I think because this is like a festive, you know, Christmassy kind of vibe, let's give these letters a little bit of like a jingle bell kind of, just like a jolly little rotation. You know?
Jolly little rotation.
Yeah, why not?
What makes it jolly? It's just rotation that's jolly.
It's jingly, it's the vibe.
Right.
I'm just kind of picking numbers at random here. Just we'll go back and we'll refine this. But essentially, I'm kind of saying we'll start the rotation at 0. It'll kind of lean back, it'll go forward, and then it'll just kind of wibble wobble back to the 0 starting
Jingly.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally jingly. And I think we
cool.
probably want to drag this out a little longer. That's happening maybe a bit too quickly. Yeah, I feel like that needs to be longer still. This is sort of the part in the process you could like lose a day.
Right.
Well, we don't have a day, so we'll go with what we've got here. I think that's looking kind of okay. Yeah,
Nice.
it's jolly enough, I think.
It's jolly for sure.
It's festive. And because we've got these keyframes now, we can just highlight all of our layers here and paste them directly on there. And now everything is sitting in one nice little clump, I guess, which is not really what we want. We probably want to stagger these a couple of keyframes because it's all we like to like lead the eye through rather than having everything happen all at once.
Yeah.
Where are we? Here, maybe that can start. I think it will take a bit long if we go happy one letter at a time and then holiday. So we might kind of get them going at the same time.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm just kind of picking 2 keyframes as an amount to nudge each of these by, because I want it to be staggered, but I also don't want it to be too delayed. And 2 keyframes feels like, we'll get the effect without delaying it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. All right, now if we zoom out here, hopefully, a little bit of a render happening there, but there we go. Cute.
Nice.
Okay, so I had started that motion at 5 seconds. And if we go back to our completed artwork, that's actually where we're cutting off currently. So if we just drag this timeline out, I don't know, just a bit beyond 6 maybe. And that motion should happen right just as the folding closes. And I feel like that's also, I like that it happens after you read the snarky message inside.
Yeah.
Like, happy holidays. Ugh, like grumbly, angry, and then it closes back up and it's just kind of like a little
satisfied with their cheeky message, but also, if you consider that the beginning and you're watching it over and over again, it's also excited about the cheeky message they're about to send.
Yeah. So it works either way you read it, which is kind of fun. And I mean, you could go back if you wanted to with your original lettering, like you could make each of these its own layer and do whatever other type of, they could rotate or jump around or any other type of animation you want in there. But I just think it's kind of nice having that, like, that inside be quite rigid and static, and then the kind of top and tail being the cheeky little wink at the end.
Yeah, I love it. It's so cool.
So that's our little Mad Magazine fold in.
That's awesome.
I'm sorry there was so much maths, but I feel like once you kind of figure out that in this instance, 600 is the answer to the problems of the universe.
Right. 34.
Once you kind of figure out, once you kind of figure that out, it all sort of falls into place a little bit more easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just had so much fun with this one. I loved like I said, I've made physical versions of these fold-ins in the past, and I don't know why I hadn't until now thought to do a digital one, but I feel like there's a lot of potential here for
more shenanigans.
Shenanigans. Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
That's great. Well, I love it, and thank you for kicking this all off. I don't think anyone's ever used the word concertina on Adobe Live either. So
All
I don't think we've
right.
had a reason for that word. Maybe Kittiopelaskis at one point, but I don't think it's come up once before. So yeah, so that's awesome.
Finally,
Yeah, it's a big, big
breaking new
word for
ground.
us, you know. Um, but thank you for teaching us all this. And yes, there was a bit of maths, but I think it's more about the method
Yeah.
than the maths, right? It's kind of a methodical approach. And if you go back to the start and you watch this, you know, you set it up with those dimensions in mind to make it
Mm.
easier to figure out. And you can do that. It's really 1 to 4, right? Whatever ratio of 1 to 4 you
Yeah.
wanted to do. So
Yeah.
that also worked
Absolutely.
within the vertical thing that would obviously work for the brief that we were talking about. And the brief we were talking about, Sophie has just kicked off our little experimentation of creating some holiday cards for you, and we'll create a little page. We'll create a page on Behance or something like that, and we'll host them all. And then Sophie and some of the other artists that are coming on over the next couple of weeks very graciously said that you can download it or you can send a digital version, you can save it, you can send it, all that sort of stuff. So we'll provide a link to that hopefully before our next live stream to continue this series. And also
Yeah,
eventually we'll
absolutely.
get the file from you at some point as well before we do that. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely. I want everyone to send this to their colleagues, to their bosses,
yeah.
to anyone they don't want to hear from over the holiday break.
Yes. Yeah. Just a veiled message to my bosses. Here you go, guys.
Yeah.
Um, but I love it. Thank you, Sophie. As always, we have a blast having you here on Adobe Live. Thank you, everybody in chat, for the comment. There were lots of wows in there about this process as well. Thank you for the folding effect from Axel. Alessandra was giving you compliments about color pretty much the whole time. And so was Dark Hours Co. as well, getting pinks and yellows to work
Ugh,
as
I'm
only
a
you
sucker
can.
for a pink and yellow, as you can tell. I'm just, yeah, it's my favorite color palette.
I'm all about it. I love it. Love
Yep.
having you on. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. We have 2 live streams. I'm actually doing a hype reel, which is completely separate to this, in Premiere Pro with Chris Hansen. He's going to teach me a couple of his favorite techniques of using Premiere Pro, some of the new stuff that came out of Max. And then we have Jeremy Lord coming on and tackling this holiday fun brief. So there's something for everyone. Join us then. We're going to have a great time. And Sophie, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Flynn.
See you next time. Bye, everyone.
See ya.